Shrew universe, and welcome back to the Shakespearean Shrew. I am your Shakespearean Shrew, Karen Feiner, professor from the University of Oklahoma and lover of all things bard. This podcast is a decorum-be-damned entrance into understanding Shakespeare's stages, for there are many, and all the players on it. Today we are talking to Joshua Murray, playing Hamlet in the upcoming production of Hamlet at the University Shakespearean Park. Hello.
Hi.
We are so excited to have you today. So we're going to get started because you are the titular character of this play. You are the man. And being the man in a play that can sometimes last 4 hours. Thankfully it won't, for all of my viewers and all the people coming out, it's not going to be a 4-hour production of Hamlet. But it absolutely can in some productions. And so what is it like taking on a role of this size, of this magnitude?
So even now I'm still like working through like all like the decision making and thinking my way throughout the process with each and like every soliloquy, monologue, and as I was just previously working with Tyler, I am a huge like thinker. I think so much. I'm an overthinker.
You're perfect
like,
for Hamlet.
You know, right. Like I overthink, and so he was like, I feel like this role like was magic. It's like you seem to be like a huge like thinker. And we'd already talked about like me tending to like overthink and stuff, and he's like, and that's basically like what's going on here. Like it's all this thinking, and then all that thinking is making him less prone to action. And
I love that you said that, because the first thing that you said as you were talking about this was like making decisions. I've got to make decisions, and I'm like, oh, you're pre-Hamlet in Hamlet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is. You're absolutely right in the fact that, and Tyler is absolutely right, that you might be the perfect Hamlet.
No.
And because for Hamlet, it's all mental.
Yeah.
It's all, and portraying that as an actor, right? Because your job as an actor is to act, to do. How do you balance out the need to act and do with the fact that Hamlet does not do? Mm-hmm. Hamlet thinks out loud.
Yeah. It almost comes, I guess it almost comes like near natural. Like I think it gets to a point like to where I'm trying to blur the line between Hamlet and Joshua, because just like Hamlet, like I said, I overthink, and it makes me like not act. And me, Joshua with decision making is terrible. I suck at decision making. And so me and Hamlet have a lot in common when it comes to making decisions.
So is that helping you as you're portraying? Because like you said, the lines starting to blur. So is that helping you in terms of your portrayal of him? Or is it like, wow, we've now got the double indecisiveness of myself and Hamlet as a character, and I'm sitting there going, oh boy. Like, mm-hmm. So is it helping, you think, or hurting, or a little bit of both, and you're kind of battling it as an actor?
I think it's helping, and for a second I almost said I think it's a bit of both, but I think it's helping more so than damaging. So because now that I'm thinking not just as Joshua but as Hamlet, there's like I'm still trying to keep in the fact that I am playing Hamlet, so I have to find a way to like center my line of thinking, because like his way of thinking is very like wondrous, but then it's also focused at the same time, where he's like connecting the dots between this instance and this instance, and things that are happening. And questions are being answered towards like honestly near like the end of the play for himself. Yeah.
So do you think his conclusions that he makes, because I agree, he connects the dots a lot throughout this play. Do you think that he's accurate for the most part when he's connecting the dots? Do you think he's drawing the right conclusions, or he's drawing the conclusions he wants to draw?
I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix. I think there were the conclusions that he wants to draw for everything to make sense, but then the conclusions that just happen naturally where it's like, oh, like this is this. Like we were actually just talking about this soliloquy in particular in Act 4 where he was just talking with the captain about Fortinbras's like going on to conquer some meaningless patch of land. And for nothing, and he's like, well, if he's able to go off and conquer like this land, it's their like death in the face, regardless of like the consequences, he's still able to like go on and act, but why can't I, someone who's had like my father slain, my mother married with my uncle, and for what reason, and also that Hamlet was also like next in line, and Claudius took that from him too. And so he has all these reasons, but for some reason, like these reasons, he can't take action. And because he couldn't take action, Polonius is now dead. And Ophelia, not that he knows yet, will die. And when he finds this out, like this all like, it's like, wow, so like my whole indecisiveness, like kind of caused all this to happen. He's like, yeah, my thoughts be bloody or be nothing worth. And then he goes off to England and comes back a man on a mission.
Yes, he does. He really does. He comes back, and it's so interesting because it's one of Shakespeare's weird timeline jumps where we're like, what just happened? Because age-wise, he jumps. Maturity-wise, he jumps. But the timeline, and we're like, wait a second. What just happened? But he goes from almost being like a teenage boy who doesn't understand or doesn't care, comes across callous, and then he comes back, and like you said, man on a mission, he comes back as almost a different figure. And so, what do you think, is it responsibility, the recognition that for not acting, that it's not only action that necessitates responsibility, but also not action, inaction that is also, he has to learn to take responsibility for that as well? What changes for him?
I think it is a mixed responsibility because of the promise that he made. Like he swore to his dead father that he was going to like take action and do this. But I feel like, it's a mix of responsibility, and also it is a bit personal for him too.
I mean, how much is it just like, is it fast forwarding? Like, is that what Shakespeare did? Because the timeline never matches up, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those where we're like, oh, we're doing a Shakespearean timeline where all of a sudden, whoop, and we're in this different present. But again, we see a different Hamlet. Did Hamlet just grow up? Did Hamlet just, is it just learning? Is it education? What elements do you think when you went off the stage and went back to England and then came back and were like, yep, they tried to kill me.
Gotcha. So actually in that same soliloquy, when I go off, we were talking about how that's like him beginning his, what's that word? Growing maturity, maturity. I don't know if maturation is a word. I'm just making
No, maturation is a word. You're good.
Slay. Where he begins to like that before he goes on to England. That's like right when he begins to like mature, because that's him finally like making the decision, finally making like his decision to take action. And so from there, it's how do I come back here to actually, put it in do it, to do the thing, to do the thing.
Do the damn thing. Okay, so you mentioned the dead father and the sworn oath of vengeance for the dead father. And I always think the ghost is so interesting, especially because we just did Macbeth at Oklahoma Shakespeare in the Park, and then we went to Hamlet. And so in Macbeth, we've got the witches who are like, you'll be king, I'm not gonna tell you how. And he's like, well, I'm just gonna kill the king. I'm like, let's do this. And then you've got the ghost in Hamlet. How do you feel about the relationship between Hamlet and his father? What does this ghost do for this play? Why do you think this ghost is such an important element for Hamlet?
I guess how I interpret what I believe Hamlet's relationship with his father is, I think Hamlet looked up to his father as someone, that's who he wanted to be and impersonate, but his father seems more robust and full of vitality, while Hamlet is more intellectual and not really much of a fighter, but a thinker and does things more analytically than how his father would. And so I feel he admired his father for all the parts that he liked, that he wanted. And so, when all this stuff happens, now he's dead now. Now my mother is married with my uncle,
That's a quick
jump scare. No, it's how everything was so fine before. You both were near inseparable, and now I can't even really stand to look at this, and I'm also very distraught about the loss of my father, and so grieving throughout this entire time, being constantly and being at home and being constantly reminded that that relationship is happening.
Right.
Is I don't.
No, it's one of those where you're like, ooh, that's a little gross.
It's go off, but okay.
But I think one of the things that's interesting to me is because, that one scene, of course, one of the most famous scenes from Hamlet, where we've got the skull and alas, poor Yorick, we have this idea of this jester who basically raised Hamlet. And so I always think it's so interesting, and I love what you said about his father being who he drove himself to be. It was the figure that he wanted to become and saw that he was not. Because I wonder if you agree or disagree, I don't know that there was a lot of familial affection between him and his parents. It seems like all the affection was between them and not between Hamlet and the king or Gertrude. And so, for me, there was always that other secondary part where he was like, oh, my father died, and my mother, rather than turning her attention to her son, to me, now is just doing the same thing that she did and ignoring me with my father to now ignoring me with my uncle. Extra gross. Right?
No, yeah.
So it seems like there's a lot of familial disconnection. And I wonder, again, if that's why he is reluctant, why he somehow delays the killing of Claudius, because he's sitting there being like, yeah, you did tell me to do this, but do you think there's any of that tension in there?
I think also it's interesting about the familiar, because that's honestly a new thing for me to even look on. So I'm like, oh,
love it.
I'm like, okay. With that disconnect there, I think I think what.
No, I'm glad I gave you food for thought. I'm glad I did. But yeah, because when you think of Claudius and he's trying to take the place of the king, right? And you're like, oh, Is it even worse because the king was a great king, but a shit father? Like, and so taking that place and then trying to, take that same role with his mother. Again, for me, it's always just one of those really, really grimy moments in Shakespeare where you're just like, oh, this is not a good family dynamic.
Yeah.
Because then on the other side of the spectrum, he gives you a parallel, right? He gives you Ophelia's family, which is without mother. But we have, Laertes, a brother who is very supportive of his family. And then you've got Polonius, who, I'm going to be honest, is kind of a jackass.
Well, yeah, because he's trying to tell we were talking about how with Ophelia, and I'm not Ophelia, but just with her relationships with everyone, everyone's trying to tell her how to live her life, who to love, who not to love, and just practically just what to do. She can barely have a thought for herself, and I feel whenever she does, it's shut down, and it's oh, no, we're gonna do this instead. I'm gonna prove to you that Hamlet is mad. He doesn't love you, he's mad. And that whole situation.
Oh yeah.
That's not even about me. That's about her and her relationship with other people.
But I think it is I think the reflection of what you're saying, where you've got Ophelia who's basically stripped of the ability to think for herself, and Hamlet, who is so consumed by his own thoughts that he can't think of her. I mean, it's this perfect layout for the worst relationship ever.
Yeah.
Which it basically is. You're just again, I can't help going back to Macbeth just because we just did it here, but you've got Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and you're great relationship until you start killing people, and then it all goes to shit. And then you've got this other relationship where you're this was a terrible idea. I don't know who put these two together. This is not a good plan. But I think it comes down to what you just said. I think you pulled it out. She is not allowed to think for herself. He thinks of no one but himself. And so how can they possibly coexist as a couple? It's not gonna work. And then what happens to her is terrible, but it's almost inevitable in a sense, especially with what roles women were allowed at the time.
Yeah.
She was a ruined woman who had nowhere to go. That's always a fun one. So you kind of answered my next question, which was Hamlet's cruel use of Ophelia. But overall, in terms of the play, are there scenes that you have really enjoyed, scenes that are just exciting for you, you feel a lot of energy in them, or scenes that are really more difficult than others?
I think the scenes that are, I guess I'll go to them.
You can start with positive or negative, your choice.
No, I'll start with the more I guess the scenes that are more difficult for me, the one where he faces off with Gertrude and Steinway. So we're gonna sit down and I'm gonna tell you how I truly feel about everything that you've been doing and tell you everything that's wrong with it, and then you're going to repent, you're gonna fix yourself, because you're married to a bad man who killed my father. And she's not really picking up the words that I'm saying because it's something that I feel she knows. I feel like it's something that she kind of knows, deep down, but she's not looking at it because it's too hard for her. And I feel oh God, she has a mind too. She's oh, Hamlet, stop, because these words are too. I think she's like, yeah, like they're too painful. And it's like, well, I need to help you see, since apparently, like, you're blind, you can't even see it, like, yourself. But that's like a hard one for me, just because it's not something that I want to place so much like anger, but it's like the reverse mother's disappointment. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because he's an unreliable narrator at that point. Like, we don't trust him as an audience. His mother certainly doesn't trust him. She's afraid of him. So it's a hard thing, because you, as Hamlet, want so desperately for her to understand, but there are so many obstacles between her and her ability to hear what you have to say at that point. So that's a really interesting one, because how do you show that? How do you show those kinds of obstacles on the stage? Because they're not necessarily blatant in the lines. It's, again, all in terms of how you relate to one another. So that's a great obstacle one. That's okay. I feel that one.
I guess, like, even in that scene where, I guess, to go back to the ghost and like who he reveals himself to and who he doesn't reveal himself to, I think he doesn't reveal himself to the mother, because I think at the same time he's also like, I guess for me, I'm thinking like the father's also like why and or how did this happen? That's also like a source of his shame, and so he's only like revealing himself to me. I think to others that he thinks I trust, they'll hear him out, because it was then that guided me to my father to begin with. And so I think in that, I guess that also adds to that unreliable narrator, because it's like, does Hamlet really just see things, or is the father really not there, and I'm actually just like fucking insane?
Right. Like in the beginning, everybody sees the ghost, and then as this gets worse, as everything exacerbates and the emotion gets higher, he's the only one who sees him later in the play, and you're like, well, why? Why is he the only one that sees him at that point when everybody saw him before? And so again, I think you're right, it kind of creates even more of a question amongst the audience of like, so what's happening here?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part about this play, right, is that there's so many unanswered questions that never really get answered. We never get, Claudius being like, yep, I killed my brother, that's what happened. No. Instead, he does try to kill Hamlet, but we also are like, oh, loose cannon. He is undermining everything there. He is creating so much instability. Okay, can we really blame him for being like, he's gotta go?
It's because I guess in his eyes, like, even if he didn't do it, like all this stuff was like false, which is why Hamlet did the play to begin with, because he's like, okay, what if the spirit that I have seen was actually the devil? He's like, I need more proof. Just so I know I'm not being played right now.
Right, and then the king's like storms off, and he's like, evidence, and you're like,
But is that all he did was get up and
like he didn't like the plot of the king getting killed, and you're just like, he is the king, so I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so instead of, and that's why I asked you the question earlier about like, is it really that he is learning things and connecting the dots, or discovering what he wants to see?
Just to fit like his own narrative. Yeah.
And so I always love that question, because you don't have an answer. And I think that it's one, up to the director and up to the actors in terms of how they want to play it. But two, even at the end, I don't think even the productions where maybe the player, who is playing Hamlet knows, I don't think as an audience we necessarily do, because we don't trust you.
Really, yeah, and I guess during like the scenes, I guess, like he is acting more frantically or like out of character. The usual, and like everyone's like observing this, and like yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The people that we do trust, you know, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, they're outside people who are giving us insight, and yet later we're like, oh, we don't trust them either because they totally set up him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really, our advice to all of you is trust no one.
Trust no one. But yeah, that was one of the scenes that I had that are more difficult for me. Also because it's also just heated.
Yeah.
But to think about one of the things that I do like, one of the scenes I do like playing with is actually with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's like entrance. That whole bit that we have, the like, oh, but like I did not invite you guys here, so why are you guys here? Like I can already like instantly suspect that like something is up because it's like what caused you to just randomly appear. Yeah. I mean, you weren't at the wedding, so it can't be the wedding. So it's like with all these, it's like there's only one other explanation. That's because the king and queen has sinned for you, and then he goes on like this whole tangent that I think it's very real for him. And like the process of that first, he's like, oh yeah, I've lost all my mirth. I'm not exercising. And then like as he's like going off on like this tangent, it's like, well yeah, in like a real sense, it's because, you know, things are just not looking, these are just like bleak, I guess. It's like talking about like the earth and the sky, and how like both of them are like, there's like this dichotomy about how beautiful like they both look, but how like stale it is to him now, and how like pestilent, he uses like negative words, even for like human beings. He's like, what a piece of work is a man? I don't know what reason on it and faculty. And then finishes it off with like, what is this quintessence of dust? And it's just like, for me, I'm like working through that like myself. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, okay. I was like, I kind of really like. I it was one of my favorite scenes to do.
It's, yeah, I mean, I think that idea of everything that you see or assume, you should not assume. You should, you know, question or reconsider. Again, playing right back into Hamlet's already, you know, tendency to overthink things. But yeah, when, like you said, when his friends show up and he's like, these people who I trust and now don't.
Yeah.
Like, what, you know, what world do I live in here where, you know, like we said, we can't trust the sky, we can't trust the ground we're walking on. You know, people are all going to be gone. There is nothing that's going to stay. And then, of course, you get Horatio, who is our only constant.
Yeah, Horatio's my only hope.
You're my only friend.
But yeah.
So what does it mean to you that Horatio is left at the end? That he's the man left standing?
Personally, I don't know why, but like it makes me so happy that he's the only one like standing. Because like I guess for me, Laertes was an unexpected consequence, such as that entire family actually. All of them were not. Those were unintended deaths. Like those weren't supposed to happen.
Civilian casualties.
But having Horatio, who's like been there by my side and it's kind of like been like, you know, the one to like kind of like keep me in check in a way, and like him being my sanity, I guess.
That's a really interesting way to put it. I like that. Okay.
But it's like with that, like Horatio to me is just like this pure, like genuine friend who I could trust since the beginning. I guess so is like Marcellus and Bernardo, but like we don't see them. But I guess Horatio kind of just encompassing all three of them, I guess. I don't know, as Joshua, it makes me super happy that Horatio gets to survive and like tell my story, because who else does Hamlet trust to actually tell the story after, you know, he's poisoned and like left for dead. And he's told Horatio, like in the scene, like right before the whole fight, like, yeah, this is what I did. Like, yeah, I was on a pirate ship. Da da da. I wrote a letter to the king and used. I think it might be cut in our script. I think in the non-cut one, he's like he puts like a signet, like his ring. It's like the letter. It's like, yeah, because this is from me, the king. To the King of England to be like, yeah, so the people who are going to deliver this, you need to kill them now.
Yes.
And then and since I'm on my way back, before I even make it back, I'm on like this timeline where like, okay, I have this timeline where I need to kill the king like near instantly before he gets word of, you know, the deed that was just enacted that I had just forged. Because then once it gets there, I'm gone. Yeah. And then no one's left to really tell my story, because he knows like Horatio's like been by my side, and so.
What do you make of the fact that on your way home, you are waylaid by the gravediggers? Because that's one of my favorite parts.
He is, yeah.
I mean, in the text they're called clowns, because in the original text there's two of them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's always just fascinating to me, this gravedigger who's just, you know, happy as a clam.
Yeah. He's like, I also find it, I guess like within like this time frame that like word's gotten out that I've been sent to England, because the gravedigger's like, yeah, Hamlet was sent away. I'm like, why was he sent away? He's like, 'cause he was mad. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what?
What are you saying about me?
I'm like, I would have thought that the king would have sent Hamlet away to be killed, like in secret, TBH. I mean,
yeah.
In my opinion, but that's.
Yeah, it is. The rumor mill definitely had some interesting takes from the gravedigger.
But I really do enjoy. The gravedigger scene is also one of my other favorite ones, because it then also introduces. Yorick, and that was also interesting when you mentioned like the disconnect between me and my mother and father, which I think also kind of plays well with how like he's someone who I admire, but is someone who probably doesn't give me as much love and affection as like he needed, or even gave him like that little push to help him become the man that he may have wanted, or he sees in his father, I guess. At least in my take.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I got off track somewhere.
No, you're good. So tell me a little bit about your career, like how you got to here. Mm-hmm. Is this your largest role? I mean, line-wise, I feel like it might be, because I don't know of any other ones that are bigger.
So, I guess line-wise, this is the most daunting that I've ever had to like do. Most certainly the biggest role I've ever played ever in my life, for sure. I guess honestly followed by Shakespeare last year for Shakespeare In Love, and then. I guess career-wise starting, I got introduced here because Catherine McGill was like, back when like we had just got back from COVID, she was our Shakespeare professor for just that one semester.
Oh, at
OU.
OU.
And so like a handful of us, and we had already heard about this place, and I think too, we were gonna plan to like audition, but that was like our like she got to like see us and like,
yes.
And so I think that helped a lot. I didn't get into like the first show, I think it was Midsummer, they did Midsummer, I didn't get into that one, and it wasn't until Dr. Judith Pinder. She's retired now, but she did Emma here, and that was my first.
Oh,
That was
okay.
my debut here.
Nice.
And then I've done, it was Emma, it was Hamlet. I was Guildenstern that time.
Okay.
2 years ago. And then I did Jane Austen's Christmas Cracker. I did audition. No, I did audition for it. I didn't get it. But someone got COVID, and then I was asked to fill in. And so they'd already been like in there. They were in like the first weekend. So I was like, oh, okay. And so I hopped in there, had the script for like that second weekend, the third weekend. I tried my best to do it all quick as possible. And then that kind of kick-started, because I just graduated.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then that kick-started my life, not in school. And then it was like, I think nothing was like really happening until April, where I was asked to understudy for the Brothers Size at Elegba Contemporary.
Okay.
And so I did that. I was understudying for 2 characters already, Ogun and Oshoosi. And then towards like, and that was like, I think at the time that was the most I ever think I had to like memorize, because it was, both of them had a line. It was just a 3-person show.
Mm-hmm.
So it was learning those two, which is that's 66% of the play.
Yeah.
And then like right towards the end, like right before like opening, one of our castmates who were playing Elegba's understudy, he got COVID. Then I ended up having to learn the new check, but I had seen it so many times.
So you'll be just fine with Hamlet.
Listen, I was like, if I could learn 90% of that script, because I was like, towards like the end, I was like, I would have to have like the script like the last part for that one character. The rest, I was able to do the design run, like 100% with them. They're like, oh, and I was like, oh. Yeah, I was like, if I can do that, I was like, I can do this. Only difference is, the language was a lot easier for me to understand for that show than it was for this one.
Yeah, language, yeah, it can be a barrier. Man, you've had to learn quite your few lines. Hamlet's perfect for you. The indecisiveness, the line, you'll be great. We're all excited. So as we're coming to this play, is there anything that you want people to really consider as they come see Hamlet, as they either come into the theater or walk out of it?
I guess that's one thing that I'm still thinking of, like, even now, just like what do I want my Hamlet to actually bring to others? Because even I'm still like trying to figure out like what exactly does Hamlet still mean to me, like 100%. Like we're still like 70% of the way there, but still like trying to figure out. And I got super self-conscious like this role too, just like wondering if like the things I'm doing is like correct or right, but everyone's gonna have a different Hamlet, and I'm like yeah, I'm like the way that I've done, like I don't know, for some reason like Shakespeare's always like scared me, just because like everyone's like Shakespeare, like it's this, and
it's
I'm
up
like,
here on a pedestal.
yeah, and it's like, and it's something that's like on everyone's sights in their minds and everything, but I'm always like, there's supposed to be like a right way to do everything, but seeing the freedom that we have now with Shakespeare, and the text has kind of loosened a bit of that anxiety that I have, because I'm starting to accept myself, like even now, that my Hamlet will be 3,000% different than the next Hamlet. Like someone will probably have more.
Nobody will have more Joshua Murray Hamlet.
No, yeah.
Than you do.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's the authenticity. right? That's what we're looking for. Because that's my favorite thing about theater, is that I can see the Mel Gibson. It's completely different, and that's what makes it great, is that it's completely different. I don't want to go to the theater and be like, oh, I've seen this one. Like, if I wanted to do that, I'd go to the movies.
No, real.
So I'm very excited to see the Joshua Murray Hamlet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be epic. So. All right, so quick rundown, everybody. We're opening September 12th for Hamlet, so get your tickets. Academic night is September 14th, so I'll give a little blurb 30 minutes before the production, and then afterward we'll do a Q&A with the cast, the crew, so bring your questions, it'll be really fun. Shakespearean is September 21st from 6 to 7:30. We will be having stage combat with Chris Cuss, Brews, and Browers. So we got the trifecta there. And then we've got a ticket giveaway for Hamlet coming up. So please make sure you look at our Instagram. And then, so yes, please follow us on Instagram for more details. So thank you all for listening. I would love your feedback. What did you like? What did you dislike? What do you want to hear about next? Especially since we're talking about Hamlet. Send me your Hamlet questions. I got you. And then again, please subscribe, and just remember, all the world's a stage, and you too can be a shrew.